for your chicken's food and water. You've got a variety of options of things that you can purchase, as well as things that you can improvise and make yourself at home. So for food, we'll also talk a little bit about what you're going to be feeding. There are a couple different styles of chicken food. So one style is a mash, where there are a mix of whole grains as well as some of the fines that are vitamins and minerals, and maybe some meals from plant products that are making up some of the protein. Then you've also got a variety of pelleted feeds. And for baby chicks, there's also something called a crumble, where they take a pelleted feed and they crush it a little bit so it's smaller pieces that are easier to digest by the chicks. In the beginning, the feed that you feed the chicks is going to be about 20% protein because they're developing a lot. If you were raising meat birds, you would keep them on that 20% protein the whole time. Because they're not meat birds and they're going to be laying eggs for you, you don't want them to develop too quickly or gain too much weight. So after a couple of months, you'll end up changing to what's often called a pullet developer feed. And that's a feed that you'll feed from between 2 to 6 months approximately. And that's something that will bring the protein down to 16 or 17% and doesn't have the extra calcium that your layer feed later will have. So when you're feeding your baby chicks in the very beginning, if you choose to raise chicks, you'll have a variety of options that are smaller in scale because you'll have less food out at a time. There are dishes like this that come in both galvanized metal as well as plastic. And then there are some that are smaller trough versions of this. These come in a lot of different sizes. Some have holes along the top and some have this bar that spins. So ideally the chicken can't stand and perch on top of it. When they get bigger, you could change to a bigger trough. And then there are also both galvanized metal and plastic hanging hoppers, they're often called, where you have a tube that the feed sits in, and then there's this side right here where they're going to eat out of. And that's something that you can either hang from a chain or a cable in their chicken house, or you can put up on bricks. You want it to be basically at their back height when they're eating so that they don't kick up as much bedding into it. So it's something that you can improvise either way, and if you're noticing a lot of bedding, just make sure to raise it either higher on what you're hanging it from or add another piece of wood or brick underneath it. This works really great for pelleted feed, but it's not as good if you're feeding a mash style like this. So we talked to a breeder who makes her own feed, and she recommended using a horse style feed tub. So we've also found that in a galvanized metal. There are some other people we know that get plant tray bottoms that are ceramic and are glazed on the inside. Your chicken will generally eat about half a cup of feed a day. So it's not too much feed that you're going to have out if you only have a few chickens in your backyard. So the key if you're going to improvise a feeder is just to make sure that it's something that they can't easily kick over. So if you used a smaller pie pan, it works when you're just doing a little bit of treats of a wet mash, but if it was in there all the time, they step on it and it flips over, and so it's not as efficient for your feed if it's spread out all over the ground, even though they will do their best to try to clean up after it. For water options, you've got a number of things from very similar looking options as the feeder. There are things like this that have a screw in top that again can be plastic or metal, and you can use a mason jar so you don't end up with the plastic part here. You can use a mason jar that you've got around the house, and then you just screw it on and you've got a nice waterer. If your chickens are in the teenage stage for a while and you need an in-between waterer, or if you're raising more chicks, you can also go with a 1 gallon waterer like this. And then there are matching feeders. For bigger water options, again, there are the galvanized metal as well as different plastic watering options. And they come in a variety of sizes, so you've got anything from that 1 gallon size on up to 3 and 5 gallons, which generally will be plenty for a backyard chicken flock. We realized since we keep goats with our chickens that they love to drink out of the goat's water bucket, which I would never have thought of as a chicken waterer. There are some attachments where you can hook these to the side of a chicken coop if it's wood, and you can also just use a carabiner and latch it to the side of the wire on your chicken fence. The nice thing if you're using it, especially as a supplemental water source, is it's very easy to fill with cold water from your hose. You can add ice cubes to it, and they're tall enough that they can easily drink over the side. And even our little bantam hops up on the side of it and drinks, and then she's like, "Gloop, gloop, gloop," which is really, really cute. So that could be another option, and it's really inexpensive. I used to say that if you were going to invest in one thing over the other, to definitely spend your money on the waterer because it's much easier to improvise a feeder. But there are lots of ways to improvise your waterer too. There are people that also make inverted 5 gallon buckets or even smaller buckets, and there are designs online that you can find to make your own feeders and waterers. So lots of really nifty things you can do if you're feeling crafty.